The flashing red and blue lights pulsed against my locked gate, casting long shadows across the pavement. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching as two officers stepped out of their cruiser. My neighbor Karen was already in full performance mode, arms flailing as she demanded justice for what she claimed was a community emergency. I knew how this was going to play out before the first word even left their mouths. She had done this before, but this time something about it felt different, more desperate. "Sir," the older officer, his badge reading Sergeant Doyle, called out as he approached. "We received a report about an unauthorized obstruction on what might be a public access road." I exhaled, rubbing my temple. "It is not a public road, it is my driveway, private property, and I have every right to close it off." Karen scoffed, her voice dripping with indignation. "That is not true. This road has always been open, people use it all the time. You cannot just block it off." "People use it because they do not respect property lines," I shot back. "That does not make it theirs." That made her even angrier. The younger officer, his tag reading Rivera, glanced at the thick folder of documents on my patio table. "Mr. Bishop, do you have proof of ownership?" I picked up the deed and held it out. "Right here. This driveway has been private property since the house was built. Nothing has changed except that I finally got tired of people treating it like a public road." Doyle took the papers, skimming them. "Then why all the fuss now?" Karen crossed her arms, her face turning an impressive shade of red. "Because he blocked off something people have been using for years. What if there is an emergency? What if services need to get through?" I pointed at the street. "There is a public road right there, Karen. This is not the only way in or out of the neighborhood." Doyle sighed, handing my documents back. "Legally he is right. If it is private property he has the right to restrict access." Karen's mouth fell open. "What, are you serious? This is not over." Rivera still looked skeptical. "With all due respect, sir, why now? Why close it all of a sudden?" I hesitated. That was the real question, was it not? Because for years I had tolerated it, people cutting through my driveway like it was a shortcut. But a week ago everything changed. I had been digging near the far end of my property, thinking about expanding my workshop when my shovel hit something solid, concrete, but not just any concrete, smooth, reinforced, deep. Curious, I dug further and uncovered what looked like the edge of a sealed tunnel buried beneath decades of dirt and neglect. And the moment I found it, things started happening. That night, my security cameras caught something strange: two men in dark clothing walking along my driveway. They were not neighbors, they were not police. They stopped exactly where I had been digging, stood there for a moment, then left. The next morning I found my fence tampered with. The lock which I had installed myself had been clipped and hastily replaced with another, but I had not done it. I reviewed the footage again, rewinding the tape, watching frame by frame. At 3:27 a.m. two figures emerged from the shadows, one holding bolt cutters, the other crouched low, pressing his hands against the dirt where I had been digging as if searching for something. Then, as silently as they appeared, they left. Later that day I heard Karen talking to another neighbor, her voice hushed but urgent. She was not just mad about the driveway anymore, she sounded scared. I watched her from my porch, noting the way she kept glancing at my house, at the spot where I had been digging. Did she know something I did not? I did not tell Karen any of that. Instead I shrugged. I was tired of people trespassing, thought it was time to set some boundaries. Doyle studied me carefully but said nothing. Rivera, however, was not convinced. "Mind if we take a look at where you closed it off?" I gestured toward the gate. "Be my guest." The two officers walked over, inspecting the heavy-duty steel barrier. It was new, freshly installed last week, solid enough to keep out anything short of a battering ram. Karen hissed, her voice sharp with accusation. "He is hiding something. Why else would he suddenly block the driveway?" I turned to her, lowering my voice. "Karen, I built this gate because I do not want people on my property anymore, and you have no right to tell me otherwise." For the first time I saw something flicker in her eyes, uncertainty, fear, or something else. Then, as if on cue, a black SUV rolled past the street, slowing slightly as it neared my house. It did not stop, it did not even linger for more than a second, but I saw it, and I saw the way Rivera's jaw tightened as he caught sight of it too. That night, after the police left and Karen stormed back into her house, I sat in my workshop, reviewing the security footage once more. The SUV had circled my block 3 times, once at 9 p.m. again at midnight, and finally at dawn. I did not recognize the plates, but something told me I was not supposed to. As I stared at the screen, the back of my neck prickled. I had spent the past week trying to convince myself this was just paranoia, that I had imagined the figures in the night, the clipped lock, the strange unease in Karen's eyes. But watching that SUV creep past my house again and again, I knew the truth. Something was going on, and somehow I had just placed myself right in the middle of it. The sound of the SUV's engine faded, but the tension in my chest did not ease. I stayed at my desk, staring at the security footage, my fingers tapping absent-mindedly against the armrest of my chair. 3 times in one night, that was not just a coincidence. Someone was watching me, and they were not trying very hard to hide it. I exhaled slowly, shutting off the screen before my paranoia got the best of me. I needed sleep, but my gut told me this was not over. The next morning I woke up to a sharp knocking on my front door. My pulse jumped before I even opened my eyes. I rolled out of bed, pulling on a t-shirt, and made my way downstairs. Through the peephole I spotted Rivera standing on my porch, his arms crossed, expression unreadable. Not exactly the wake-up call I wanted. I opened the door just enough to see him. "Officer, something I can help you with?" Rivera did not answer right away. He glanced toward the driveway, then back at me. "Can we talk inside?" I hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. He did not waste time, striding into my living room like he already knew the layout. I shut the door, watching as he turned back to me, lowering his voice. "I need you to tell me exactly what you found." My muscles tensed. "You saw the paperwork. It is my property. What I do with it is my business." Rivera sighed, rubbing his jaw. "Look, I know what the law says, but I also know you are not telling me everything, and after last night I need to know if you are in danger." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean after last night?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, swiping through the screen before holding it up for me to see. It was a grainy image from his dash cam, taken sometime during the night, the black SUV parked 2 blocks from my house. The time stamp read 4:17 a.m. My jaw tightened. "You followed them?" Rivera shook his head. "I was patrolling near the neighborhood and caught it on my camera, thought it was odd, so I ran the plates. No registration, it is not in any database." A chill ran through me. "So whoever is in that car is not just some nosy neighbor." Rivera nodded. "That is why I need you to tell me exactly what is going on. What did you find under that driveway?" I swallowed hard, debating how much to say. I could lie, pretend it was nothing, but I knew that that was not going to help me. I walked over to the patio door and pulled back the curtain, pointing toward the far end of my property. "It is not just a driveway, there is something underneath it, some kind of structure. I do not know how deep it goes, but it is old, and it was sealed off intentionally." Rivera followed my gaze, his expression unreadable. "And you uncovered it?" "Part of it, enough to know it was not meant to be found." Rivera exhaled slowly. "I need to see it." I tensed. "That is not a good idea." "And why is that?" I turned back to face him. "Because someone else does not want it to be seen, and they are watching." For the first time, Rivera looked genuinely unsettled. He glanced toward the window, his hand instinctively brushing against his holster. "You think whoever was in that SUV knows what you found?" "I do not think I know." Rivera was silent for a moment, then took a deep breath, nodding once. "Then we need to move fast, show me now." I hesitated. Letting him see meant bringing him into this mess, but keeping it to myself meant I was facing it alone, and if last night was any indication, that was not going to be an option for much longer. "All right," I finally said, "but if we do this, we do it my way. No backup, no radio calls, just us." Rivera's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Lead the way." As we stepped outside, I felt the weight of unseen eyes on me. Whoever was watching was not done yet, and neither was I. I led Rivera toward the back of the property, my every step careful, measured. The early morning air was still and unnaturally quiet, even the birds seemed to be avoiding this part of my land. I crouched down near the disturbed dirt where I had started digging days ago, pulling back the tarp I had laid over the site. Beneath it, the smooth concrete surface gleamed slightly under the weak sunlight, untouched by time. Rivera knelt beside it, running his fingers along the seam. "This is not normal." "You are right," I murmured, "and that is the problem." He pressed his palm against the surface, frowning. "It is cold, and not just from being underground. This thing is insulated, reinforced." My stomach tightened. Then it is not just an old bunker. Rivera stood abruptly, scanning the tree line, his jaw clenched. "I do not like this. Someone built this for a reason, and they did not expect anyone to find it." I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "You think it is military? Could be, or something else. Either way, you should not be anywhere near it." I stared at him, incredulous. "Now you sound like the guys in that SUV. Just forget about it, right? Walk away." Rivera held my gaze, but there was something in his eyes now, something that had not been there before. "I am saying you might not have a choice." I did not like the way Rivera said that, the way his voice lowered just enough to make it feel more like a warning than a statement. I exhaled, my breath visible in the cool morning air. If I was not supposed to have a choice, then someone was going to try to make sure I did not. The weight of unseen eyes pressed down on me, making every movement feel heavier. Rivera stepped back from the uncovered concrete, shaking his head. "This is not just some abandoned structure. The way it is sealed, the way it is built, this was never meant to be found." I crouched down again, running my hand along the surface. The material was different than I had expected. It was not just reinforced concrete, there was metal beneath it, something dense and cold. I looked up at him. Someone knew it was here, maybe they even expected me to find it. Rivera's jaw tightened. "If that is the case, then you have got a much bigger problem." I heard the low hum of an engine before I saw the vehicle. My stomach twisted as I turned toward the street. Another black SUV, not the same one from the night before, but close enough that it did not matter. It rolled past my house slowly, deliberately, as if whoever was inside wanted to make sure I saw them. Rivera tensed beside me, his hand brushing his holster. "This is not good." "No kidding," I muttered. The SUV did not stop. It just kept going, disappearing around the bend, but I knew better than to think that meant I was in the clear. I turned back to Rivera. "Tell me you got a plate this time." He pulled out his phone, checking his dash cam feed. It was blurry, but still legible. He muttered the numbers under his breath, then froze. "What is it?" I asked, watching the color drain from his face. "It is registered to a government fleet, but there is no department listed, no agency, just a blank record." My chest tightened. So whoever they are, they do not want to be found. Rivera put his phone away, exhaling slowly. "If they know we are looking, they will escalate. You need to be careful." I stared at the concrete slab, my gut screaming at me that I was already in too deep. "What do you think is down there?" Rivera did not answer right away. Instead, he looked at me with something almost like pity. "I do not know, but I do not think you are ready to find out." I stood up, dusting off my hands. "Ready or not, I do not think I have a choice anymore. If they wanted to keep this a secret, they should not have made it so obvious." Rivera shook his head. "You do not get it. They do not care if you know, they care if you talk, and if they think you might be a problem, they will not hesitate to make you disappear." My jaw tightened. "Then I guess I need to find out the truth before they get the chance." Rivera looked toward the road again, then back at me. "If we do this, we do it right. No mistakes, no reckless digging. We figure out what we are dealing with first. I nodded, my pulse pounding. "Then let us start figuring it out." We covered the slab back up and walked back to the house, both of us hyper-aware of our surroundings. The paranoia was setting in, creeping into my bones. I locked the doors behind us, watching as Rivera checked his phone again. He frowned. "The SUV is still circling the block. They are waiting for something or someone," I said quietly. I sat down at my desk, pulling up the security footage from the night before. I rewound back to the point where the SUV had slowed down outside my house, my fingers tightening around the mouse as I zoomed in. The windows were tinted, but the glare from a street light briefly illuminated the outline of the driver, a man wearing a dark suit. I turned to Rivera. This is not just some private contractor, they are watching for a reason. Rivera leaned over my shoulder, his expression grim. If they are watching this closely, they already know you found something, and if they have not moved in yet, it means they are waiting to see what you will do next. I exhaled, my pulse hammering against my ribs. So they want me to make a mistake. Rivera stood up, rubbing his jaw. Exactly. The moment you step out of line, they will have a reason to act, which means you need to be smart about this. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. I had planned to dig deeper today, maybe even get a crowbar and pry open whatever was beneath that concrete, but now I was not sure that was an option anymore. A sudden noise outside made both of us freeze, a sharp knock at the front door. My stomach twisted. We were not expecting anyone. Rivera exchanged a glance with me, his hand drifting toward his gun. "Stay here," he muttered before stepping toward the door. I did not argue. I watched as he peered through the peephole, his body tensing. He turned back to me, lowering his voice. "It is Karen." I blinked, caught off guard. "Karen? What the hell does she want now?" Rivera hesitated, then opened the door just enough to see her. She looked rattled, her usual self-righteous anger replaced with something I had never seen before. She glanced at Rivera, then passed him at me. We need to talk." I frowned. "About what?" Karen took a shaky breath, stepping closer. "About them. The people watching you." My blood ran cold. Karen had been a thorn in my side since this whole mess started, but now, standing there with wide, panicked eyes, I realized something I had not considered before. She knew more than she had been letting on, and if she was scared, then I needed to be too. Karen stood on my porch, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her usual self-righteous glare replaced with something different, something close to fear. Rivera kept a hand near his holster, his body positioned slightly in front of me, a silent warning that this was not the time for games. I had never seen Karen rattled before. The fact that she was standing here now, looking over her shoulder like someone might be watching her, told me she had more to say than her usual complaints. I stepped forward, arms crossed. This better be good. Karen exhaled sharply, her jaw tightening like she was about to say something she would regret. It took her a second, but then her gaze locked onto mine and I saw it. Genuine fear. "You have no idea what you have gotten yourself into." I exchanged a glance with Rivera, who was watching her closely. "I think I have some idea." She shook her head quickly. "No, you do not." I gestured toward the living room. "Inside." Karen hesitated for only a second before stepping past Rivera and walking into my house. She stood stiffly near the window, peeking through the curtains like she expected someone to be out there. Rivera shut the door behind her, arms still crossed. "Start talking." Karen rubbed her arms, her voice lower than usual. "I do not know exactly who they are, but I know they have been watching you for a while. They do not like attention, and they definitely do not like people asking questions." I narrowed my eyes. "And how do you know that?" She swallowed hard. "Because I made the mistake of asking questions once, and they made sure I would not do it again." Rivera stepped forward slightly. "What do you mean?" Karen hesitated, then exhaled sharply, shaking her head like she hated saying it out loud. My brother used to work in real estate development. A few years ago, his company was hired to assess land values in this area, including your property. Everything was routine until he started digging into the records and found something that did not make sense, a discrepancy, something about your land never being properly recorded as available for private purchase. The next week he got a visit from men in suits. 2 days later, his office burned down. He quit his job the next day, never talked about it again. My pulse pounded in my ears. "And you are only telling me this now?" Karen's eyes flashed with frustration. "You think I wanted to get involved? I knew what they were capable of. But after what I saw last night, I cannot just pretend anymore." I glanced at Rivera. He looked as disturbed as I felt. "What did you see?" Karen exhaled. "The SUV, it was not just watching you, it was watching me too. I saw it parked outside my house at 2 in the morning, someone was standing next to it, watching your property, and then they turned and looked directly at my window like they knew I was there." Rivera shifted, rubbing his jaw. "They are tightening their grip." I turned to Karen. And why tell me this? Why not just stay out of it? Her lips pressed into a thin line. Because I realized something, if they are willing to go after me just for knowing too much, then you are already in way deeper than I ever was. You think they are just watching you? No, they are waiting for you to make a move so they can act first. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. So what do you suggest? Karen hesitated. You need to stop digging, stop pushing. If you do not, they will make you disappear. Rivera's jaw tightened. That is not an option anymore. Karen looked at him sharply. Why? Because you are a cop, you think that matters to them. I stayed silent, processing everything. Karen was right about one thing, I had been treating this like a mystery I could solve, but it was not just a puzzle, it was a warning, and warnings came with consequences. I turned back to her. You could have walked away from this. Karen's expression hardened. Maybe, but I know what happens when people pretend nothing is wrong, and I do not want to be next. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Karen had spent years making my life miserable, but now, for the first time, she was afraid of something bigger than both of us. I glanced at Rivera. We are running out of time. He nodded. Then we need to move now. I grabbed my keys, shoving them into my pocket. We going to the site? Karen paled. Are you insane? They are watching you, if they see you digging. I cut her off. They already know what I have found, the only thing left is to see what is under there before they try to stop me. Rivera pulled out his radio, hesitating for a second before tucking it back into his belt. No backup, no reports, just us. I nodded. Karen, you do not have to come. She crossed her arms. The hell I do not. If I stay behind, I will just be another loose end. The three of us moved quickly, slipping out the back door. The weight of unseen eyes followed us, but this time I was not going to stop. Whatever was buried under my land, I was going to find it before they found me first. The night air was thick with tension as we moved toward the site. Karen stuck close to Rivera, her usual bravado replaced by a nervous silence. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, my ears tuned for any sound out of place. The SUV had not circled back yet, but I knew better than to think we were in the clear. If Karen was right, and I was starting to believe she was, then they were waiting, watching, letting me take the next step so they could react accordingly. The flashlight in my hand trembled slightly as I adjusted my grip. I was not afraid of what I would find under the slab, I was afraid of what it meant, of why it had been buried in the first place, and of who had been so determined to keep it that way. We reached the tarp-covered section of my property, the dirt still slightly disturbed from where I had last left it. I crouched down and pulled it back, exposing the smooth, cold surface beneath. Rivera knelt beside me, running a hand along the seam. Karen stood a few feet away, arms crossed, shifting her weight from foot to foot like she was regretting her decision to come along. I looked at Rivera. You ready for this? He exhaled through his nose. Not even a little. I grabbed the crowbar I had stashed nearby and jammed the edge into the smallest crack I could find. The metal groaned against the resistance. Whatever this was, it was not just a loose slab of concrete, it was meant to stay shut. Karen took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you sure we should be doing this? I shot her a look. Now is not the time for second thoughts. Rivera moved beside me, gripping the crowbar with both hands. On three. I nodded, adjusting my stance. We heaved together, muscles straining. The slab shifted slightly, a thin gap forming along the edge. Then the sound hit us, a deep, hollow groan from beneath, like air being released from a pressurized chamber. My stomach clenched. That was not normal. Karen backed up quickly. I do not like this. Rivera wiped his forehead. Yeah, well, neither do I. I braced myself and wedged the crowbar deeper. We pulled again, this time with more force. The slab gave way another inch, revealing darkness below. The air that rushed out smelled stale, like something long forgotten. My skin prickled. This had been sealed for a reason. Rivera aimed his flashlight into the opening. The beam cut through the black, illuminating a metal ladder leading straight down. The walls looked reinforced, solid, untouched by time. Karen hovered behind us, eyes wide. What the hell is this? I shook my head. I do not know, but I am going to find out. Rivera exhaled, stepping back. No, I will go first. If something happens, you need to be able to get out of here. Karen scoffed. Yeah, because if something happens, that is exactly what we will do, just walk away and pretend it did not. Rivera ignored her and started his descent, the flashlight beam bouncing with each step. I gripped the edges of the opening, taking a deep breath before following him down. Karen cursed under her breath before reluctantly climbing in behind me. The air grew colder the further we descended. The walls were smooth metal, marked only by a few faint warning signs in a language I did not recognize. My foot hit solid ground and I turned, shining my flashlight ahead. A hallway stretched before us, perfectly untouched as if frozen in time. Rivera's voice was tight. This is not just an old shelter. I nodded. No, it is something else. Karen moved up beside me, arms wrapped around herself. Do you hear that? I focused my ears. At first, there was nothing, then softly, a faraway machine-like sound. Rivera turned his flashlight toward a damaged door at the end of the hallway. The sound was coming from behind it. He stepped forward carefully, fingers brushing the handle. It was not locked. That meant someone or something had been here recently. My heart beat faster as Rivera pushed the door open. The room beyond was small, filled with old computer screens and thick wires spreading along the walls. A control board gave off a weak glow, its screen covered in fuzzy static. Karen let out a sharp breath. This place was supposed to be empty, right? I stepped closer, checking the controls. Dust covered everything except for one part, the keyboard. Someone had been using it. Rivera said something quietly and pulled out his phone. No signal, of course. I ran a hand over the panel, feeling the soft vibration under my fingers. This place still had electricity. That meant it was still connected to something. Karen moved nervously. I do not like this, we need to leave. I ignored her and looked around the room. There were papers spread across the floor, faded and weak with age. I picked one up, the writing blurry but still clear. It was not in English. Rivera came up beside me. That is Chilich. I blinked. Russian. He nodded, his face serious. Now this makes even less sense. Karen's voice was sharp. What is a Russian paper doing in an empty place under your driveway? My heart pounded. That was the big question, was it not? Rivera walked to another panel, cleaning it to show an old logo, barely visible. His breath caught. That is not American. It is Soviet. My stomach dropped. This was not just an old army site. This was something else completely. Something that had been buried long before I ever came here. And now we had found it. Karen stepped back, shaking her head. No, I am not doing this. You do not just find a hidden Soviet shelter under your house and keep going. I turned to her, my voice low. We are already involved. There is no way back now. A sudden noise echoed down the hallway. A faraway metallic hit, followed by clear footsteps. Karen's face went pale. We are not alone down here. Rivera turned off his flashlight, signaling for silence. My fingers tightened around the crowbar, my breath light. Whoever had been watching us from those black vehicles was not just spying, they were here. And we had just entered their space. I breathed slowly, my thoughts spinning. We came looking for the truth. But now, I was not sure we would leave to tell anyone what we had discovered.